Hey everybody, it's Bookshore, and today this is going to be a paid review for the book Putting Wings on Ideas: How Content Travels and Becomes Popular by Instagrammer Austin Kaiser. Now, I want to be upfront with this review and say this is not a good book, but I want to preface that with a little bit with a personal experience of mine. When I was in music school, I had a moment where I was in an ensemble, and each guitarist, those three guitarists, I was one of them, had to play a bossa nova rhythm for the teacher. Now, with the bossa nova rhythm, it's kind of like this, and that's a bit of a westernized version of it, to be honest. Chair 1 did it. He was one of the best players in the class. Did fine. Chair 2 did it. He was also really good. And teacher came up to me, and I wasn't the best one. And the teacher was like, and it screwed me up, and I played the rhythm wrong. Obviously, I didn't know what rhythm can't even remember what rhythm I played. And the thing the teacher said was that, I don't know how to help you. Now, that moment sucked. He was right in the sense that I did suck. I did need a lot of improvement. I needed a lot of practice. My skill set was more towards metal, but even so, I needed to adjust and learn. But the problem with that is that he never lent out that helping hand. He just bam, slapped, no correction. Didn't help me in class, didn't teach me after class, just not that. So while I say this is not a good book, I just don't want to be negative about it without any constructive criticism. And I think something that took me so long to learn in life, as I'm aging towards 30 this year, there and that criticism is difficult to take, but it's so imperative to learn how to accept it properly, because if you don't, you don't learn, because you realize the people who care about you in life are going to be the ones to criticize you. If somebody doesn't care about you, they won't criticize you. So let me just go over the list of things of what this book is about. It's a bit muddled just from the get-go, because it was um, told to me it was going to be a book about how to teach artists how to create, how to be inspired, how to create art. But then the content kind of focuses more on viral content when I started reading it, like how content on the internet, articles, videos become super popular and get millions of clicks. Both are very important things in this day and age. In some ways, you might argue, from a business standpoint, the viral is much more important. But it muddles it, and it goes back and forth between both of them. So there's not a very good definition of what is viral, because for art and for music, those are different, and how they become popular and why they're popular are two totally different categories. But it just gives more general lifestyle advice in that, meditate, ruminate, find what inspires you while you're creating art, practice. Very basic stuff that might appeal more to somebody who's super a beginner, super trying to find their what they're trying to go for in the medium. And there are some little nuggets of advice which I find can be useful, but unfortunately, they're not elaborated upon a lot too much. So things like finding your own niche, super important. Getting shout outs from other creators, that's very important. I think my channel grew to the way it did, even though it's not big. I'm a very peanut sized small creator, but it grew because of people like one of the first people I remember. Everybody who reads Must Converse, Noah, shouted me out in a YouTube video and said like, you have to check this guy out, and I was so appreciative. Leaf by Leaf shares my videos. Fiction Beast, Philosophy 2, I think it is also called, shares my videos. George Solis, Christopher Robinson, Ryan Farrell. I have all these friends on Instagram that share my videos, and I share other people's videos. So, that's a great piece of advice. And, fostering that from a very genuine and healthy way is gonna, keep that promotion going. But pieces of advice like that are more designated to like a subsection of a chapter or a much smaller paragraph, unfortunately, within that subsection of the chapter. And I felt like that could have been the meat and potatoes of the book, where I would really like to see shine, and really going over how to foster those relationships, how to find those specific niches. When he talks about the economy of people wanting to see things, and how there are going to be some subject matters out there that are always going to stay relevant. Like a great example, my channel is not that. My channel is largely irrelevant because of the weird ass books that I'm reviewing. Doing a marathon on Jokers with McAvoy, while great in our community, isn't great for going viral. But stuff that what is great is stuff like relationship advice. It's always gonna be pertinent. So aspects like that and topics he touches on, I would love to see more, but it just wasn't there. And another thing with this book where I feel like it gets conflated, and it would have been great to see this as like a 3 volume set. One about really addressing how internet content goes viral. That's a very important thing. I think, we have a little bit, viral, but that's so important to the point where I believe well, even like advertisers and companies are trying to make memes go viral. There's like this Sisters movie or something like that, and I kept seeing memes about it before it came out. Like, I think this is the company doing it, or Wendy's like having the Twitter account that does all these memes and like badmouths people and stuff like that. Even Gordon Ramsay's YouTube channel had a marathon of kitchen nightmares. Unfortunately, people like the memes. Like they're like, oh, this person's a memer just like us. When they post the video, so they like to upload it in themselves. Not even Gordon like they like Gordon Ramsay like the content, but they like how they present the information and the titles and stuff like that. So focusing on that aspect, I think, would be great and very imperative in this day and age. Focus, and then another book on focusing on the aspect of art and how certain art pieces do become popular, like Infinite Jest, White Noise, John Coltrane. All these things are like, why is this popular? Quentin Tarantino. And, they just happen to shine out and they get popular and it's amazing. So a really deep focus on that would be great. And lastly, and this is problematic in the book where he talks about Martin Luther King and Jesus becoming viral and Martin Luther King finding a niche. Yes, Martin Luther King did become viral in a sense. The media helped him, but he didn't do it just to become viral. He did it because there's an issue there. So I think another book focusing on why these historical, political, religious figures, which you can probably subset into other books itself, but how these major figures gain that traction and how they become a household name. Even though there's all these activists out there, there's all these different philosophers. Like Heidegger's not a common household name, neither is Hegel. So why do these people branch out, and why are they more at the forefront of the zeitgeist than others? And I think if the book was clearly delineated into these 3 sections, either 3 different volumes or a huge book with 3 sections that was very well researched, that would have been amazing. Another thing is that Austin is a reader. He does have a part in this book where he lists a lot of books that he recommends that we read. It's a bunch of diaries, personal letters, essays, reflections on art and whatnot by all different people like William Butler Yeats, David Kerr, Frida Kahlo, I said that wrong, Virginia Woolf, which great, Anne Frank, Mark Twain, Leo Tolstoy. So he is acquainted with the classics. And I think a beautiful thing of this book, if it was really going to be advice for authors, would be to, unlike the George Sanders book that Leaf by Leaf reviewed and I just bought on the Small Pond book, instead of just having one book designated to one author's thought process, doing almost like a compendium of different authors and kind of synthesizing either by doing it chapter by chapter, almost more like a college book, as college textbook, or just synthesizing it into like general themes that you see throughout, or both. I think that could have been a very interesting book that could have reached a lot of people. And also, one thing I do like too is that how he mixes high art and low art. Like some moments you might cringe a little bit when he mentions King and Tolstoy and stuff like that, and he references Pokemon with it. But that's also what the postmodernists get at, and I do think there needs to be a section there for that. More, we need to get into more of the droves and like the really cringy stuff out. I'm not saying Pokemon's cringy, but it's like you really don't see those connections, and I think there should be a space for both of them together. I don't know how to do that right now, especially what he's trying to achieve, but I think that could be important too. And finally, I just think another flaw of the book is that it relies too much on his personal experience, while this is the first and only book he's written. It reminds me of a roommate I had when I was at that same school, where he was in creative writing, and afterwards, when asked him what he's going to do after he gets his degree, he wanted to go straight into teaching. And it just feels a little masturbatory to go from the student to the teacher without that intermittent period of working in the world and being out there and see what actually works out there. Because it's like when my dad told me when he went to law school, like they don't teach you how to be a lawyer in law school. You have to focus on the business aspect. You have to focus on how law actually applies to the real world and the specific cases. And so for Austin to jump from that to this book, wow, if he would have just focused on collecting other authors' thoughts, I think that would be a much more important book. But based off his own experience, this is not a lot to feed off of there. I could only really recommend this to somebody who's really first trying to think of what articles they want to write about. The advice is so general, it doesn't lead anywhere. But that being said, I know he's continuing to writing, and I hope he does continue to write. Um, and I say these things not because I have any personal attack against him or anything like that. Since this is a paid review, I am being a bit more direct to the author than I would in my other reviews. But it's just like, I want to be able to levy the proper criticism, because without the proper criticism, we can't improve, and know that this is not any form of attack. Just like, this is the world, and this is what we have to hear sometimes. Another small aspect is that sometimes the writing can be a little weak, and the metaphors can feel a little strained, and the structure of this novel is kind of all over the place. Well, there's multiple conclusions, and like there's the 5.2 sections to chapters, which doesn't feel very necessary. I feel like I can see the cheeky stuff he's trying to get at, but a more straightforward book would be better. And listing in conclusion at the end of the chapter kind of gets old, and there seems to be multiple conclusions at the end of the book. In the last 50 pages, even though it just shows a bunch of artwork and a lot of Instagram posts, it's not very relevant. Unfortunately, there's a section of the book that I just can't find right now, but he has a part where he states that nobody really remembers the critics, and for the most part he's right, unless you're Michael Silverblatt or Stephen Moore or that critic I just forgot, Harold Bloom, and that how the critics stopped Edgar Allan Poe from writing, and just to ignore the critics and to continue on with your work in a sense. I don't think he says ignore the critics, but don't let it stop you from working. And I would like to extend that same challenge back to Austin. Whatever you think of my review, whatever you think how negative or wrong I am about it, I would challenge you to, really take this criticism and continue on, continue writing. Live by your book as you want your readers to do. So, that is my honest review. The link for this book will be in the description. Putting Wings on Ideas and How Content Travels and Becomes Popular by Austin Kaiser. And I'll also list his Instagram down below as well. So if you're interested, pick up a copy.